Hey there, welcome to episode 202 of Fresh Air at 5. This week I've got some fresh air, and at the end of the week I stayed in because it was too wet. But regardless, here's the learning that I have done this week. You can click on the show notes and get the playlist for all the listening that I have done. There's a New to Me podcast with Steph Howell and Joe Marquez called Steph and Joe on the Go. And yes, excited about the AI learning that I have done, the conference planning learning that I've done, the changing our mindset with Lainey Rowell that I've done, and thinking about theme parks and the creative things we can do with our kids with mapping and design. All right, without further ado, episode 202. Oh, and we also hear from... No, that was last week. Anyhow, yeah, that's all I got. Bye.
I'm Matthew Woods, host of Leading Out of the Woods, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, coming to you every week from Abbotsford, which is about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to get some fresh air by walking about my neighborhood, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Simath First Nation and Mathwe First Nation. I consume podcast content while I walk, then reflect on this content in an unedited video, which I post on my X, formerly known as Twitter, channel every day. This podcast is the collection of the audio taken from those daily selfie videos over the course of a week, Monday to Friday. So let's jump into my listening and learning this past week.
Hey, PLN, January 27, 2025. How are you? I'm good. It's -1 Celsius, clear sky, starry, and we have had very little precipitation this month, including no snow at this point. So I'm thankful for that, and I don't like snow where I live. I like it in the mountains where it belongs, but not on my driveway because, yes, then I have to shovel it and stuff. But anyhow, all right. This morning I listened to Suzanne Daly on Teach Happier. She brings us level up connections, and she talks about a great little tip for leveling up our social connections with people around us, our families, our friends, our work colleagues, people that we think about in our daily lives a lot. I'm coming right back with more about this. One more thing for January 27, 2025. All right, listening to season 5, episode 20 of Teach Happier. Suzanne challenges us to level up our social connections by using delayed texts. I didn't know, Suzanne, you could delay text. Why would I delay text? I know I can delay emails, but why text? The point is so that you don't have to have your routine disrupted if you do this on a regular basis. You said you set your alarm for 3:30 in the afternoon. I like your examples that you shared this past week about how you have done this. And I'm going to start trying to do this because that'll strengthen my relationships. Type a text, delay it for a certain time when it's significant to the other person in their day, and bam, it's done. And you have reached out at the time you might forget, but the text will go and you'll get them a happy smile. Thanks, bye. One more thing for January 27, 2025. Listen to X Factor, Level Up Your Mental Game with Brian Martin. And he brings us an episode today on episode, I think it's 35, called Redefining Success. And how do we approach that and define it in our lives? Is it about the big milestones? Is it about the mountaintop experiences? No, it's about the daily. It's about the everyday things that we do, the consistency, the evidence of my efforts with Fresh Air at 5, the podcast, getting over 200. Yes, that's a milestone, but it's about the daily things that happen. Zane Keithley writes an excerpt in his book, How to Find Your Way, and Brian talks about that in here. So it's about what we do every day, showing up, being authentically us, and just being who we are. That makes a big difference. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Go take a listen to this podcast. Okay, bye. The last thing for January 27, 2025. I listened to Tech Tools for Teachers, episode 202. Shanna, I'm on the same episode of Fresh Air 5. So fun. And you talked with Fuzz today on episode 202 about designing theme parks. And you talked about two tools that you had found. One was Iconogram's Amusement Park Builder, which is a kind of a mapping, 3D space tool for building, maps and things like that and putting things in, which is super fun. And I'm going to check that out because that sounds like a lot of fun. And then I was so impressed by the second one, as you found theme park brochures from back, like a log of them from back in the day. So you can look at the progression of the history of a brochure over time about Disneyland or Six Flags or things like that. Thanks. Take a listen. Bye. Hey, PLN, January 28, 2025, out for Fresh Air 5, -3, and it is crisp, clear sky, and beautiful. All right, this morning I listened to Evolving with Gratitude with Lainey Rowell, and I didn't catch the episode number, but I did catch the title, and it goes from resetting our factory, changing our factory settings from surviving to thriving, and she talks about how we are wired for survival as a human being species, and our ancestors had to because of the dangers in our world, but today we don't have to. So it's about taking things like perfectionism and comparison and flight and fight response and taking and flipping them on their heads so that we can thrive in our world. This short little episode has got lots of encouragement packed in it and talks about being happy and thriving more than just surviving. Take a listen. Thanks, Lainey. Bye. One more thing for January 28, 2025. Check it out. There is a branded toque for Fresh Air at 5. Got this from my friend Eric Geis, who sent it to me recently. Him and Nick have the EdTech Throwdown, and I got a Christmas card from Eric, and he sent me a couple toques that they had made in their shop at school with the laser engraver. So I now am sporting a Fresh Air at 5 toque for walking at fresh air at 5 in the morning. So thank you, Eric. Appreciate it so very much. I will, try to wear your toque, the EdTech Throwdown, when I listen to your podcast coming up in the next couple weeks. All right, thanks all. Okay, that's it. Bye. The last thing for January 28, 2025. This morning I listened to Season 2 bonus episode, What's Next, with Ashley Yazzarlo on the Blending In podcast. And Ashley, I ran into her at Spring Q last year, sat beside her at dinner, and we talked about ed tech, coaching, and life, and the things. And she shared with me a recent revelation about her changing her position. In this episode, she goes over her journey as an educator from being a classroom teacher to being an integration tech coach in her building, to district TOSA in her district, and then how she's now back in her classroom. The journeys we go through do shape how things go, and she's talking about not having another episode of this. But you know what? Thank you, Ashley, for reflecting. So important. Appreciate it. Take a listen to what Ashley's got to say in our other episodes. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, happy Lunar New Year 2025. It's January 29, 2025. And so it's the beginning of the year of the snake and in the Chinese zodiac calendar. And it's fun. I pay attention to these things because a lot of people around me think about these things. All right, this morning on episode 118 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, Jake Miller, brings us a report and 5 updates. The report is what I'm excited about, a soapbox moment about parent and teen AI awareness. And it's a study that came out of Common Sense Media, and he talks about 7 out of 10s having used some sort of generative AI, and only 3 out of 10 parents knowing that has happened. The gap is there. We need to be aware of it, people, and teachers. We need to be aware of it all because it's shocking in our regard as well. Take a listen. Educational Duct Tape 118. The last thing for January 29, 2025, in about 3 weeks from now, maybe 2.5 weeks from now, we are going to be having our shared learning conference here in BC. I'm going to be presenting a session on Adobe Express Artificial Intelligence therein, which I'm excited about. And we have the privilege of having Holly Clark come to our district. So Holly, super excited that you're coming to share your wisdom and keynote and thoughts with us. There's also parent night about AI and the future of your kids' education with Holly. And she's going to be presenting to parents from the district PAC meeting, and the district are bringing her for this session. Excited about that, and I'm telling our families and parents about it because they need to come and learn more about AI, more than what their kids are telling them, and more than what we as teachers are telling them. All right, have a happy day. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, it's January 31, 2025, the very last day of January. And here we are. I am standing in my garage later in the afternoon. I woke up this morning. It was pouring rain. We are on the verge of getting snow here in Abbotsford. So I've got my toque on and, bracing for snow. You know, for most of everybody, they're like, you haven't snowed yet? And I said, no, it hasn't snowed yet. We didn't get any snow yet in January. Here in Abbotsford, where I live, we typically do get snow, but it hasn't happened. All right, I started listening to Steph and Joe on the go this afternoon on my way home in my vehicle, and Stephanie Howell and Joe Marquez, and they are talking about navigating conferences like a pro from their January, I think, 10th episode. So take a listen to this, and I'll be right back with some thoughts. One more thing for January 31, 2025. Continuing my thoughts on Steph and Joe on the go with Stephanie Howell and Joe Marquez from January 10th, as they talk about navigating conferences like a pro. Now, conferencing is a lot of fun. Being able to go to a conference and see people and do all the things, go to sessions, connect, network. Oh my goodness, and eat conference food. It's pretty fantastic that, we can go to these and do these opportunities of live in person, bigger than our districts and school districts and schools, and get out and learn some things. They have tips about how to look at a schedule, look at how to plan yourself. If you're presenting, how to prepare your materials, how to do those kinds of things. And it's fantastic what you guys are talking about. I'm going to NCCE at the end of February in Seattle, which is the Northwest Council for Computer Educators, I think it is, conference, and I'm looking forward to that. Hang on. The last thing for January 31, 2025. Okay, still going on about navigating conferences like a pro, and the thoughts that Stephanie Howell, and Joe Marquez have on Steph and Joe on the go from January 10th. Yes, going to NCCE in Seattle. I'm excited. There's a small group of us from our district that are going. Thank you to my boss for paying for my way and making it happen. Excited about that. Going to connect with Matt Miller. Looking forward to seeing him. And also Dan Fitzpatrick, the AI educator. They're the keynotes. And because of my podcast, it's given me a connection point and just be able to reach out on Twitter to talk to them both, and looking forward to shaking their hands and thanking them for the work that they've done and the inspiration. Because we need inspiration to leverage and improve ourselves beyond what we regularly do. That's why I like conferences. Okay, take a listen to this episode. Thanks, bye.
I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's like a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find some other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific episode podcast titles and episode numbers in the show notes, which are only a click or swipe away for your learning convenience. I've also started to put together a Spotify playlist of each of the episodes so that you can also take a listen to those specifically, and the link to that playlist is in the show notes. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR, or at Fresh Air at 5. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can be found on the Educational Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get some fresh air before the day is out and take care of yourself because you are worth it.